Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about search engine and conversion rate optimization. Now, if this is your first time at one of our webinars, then here is a quick recap on how to get the most out of the event today. We are recording everything, so you'll be able to watch back on demand within the next 24 hours or share with a colleague who might also be interested in learning a bit more about SEO and CRO. If at any point you have any technical difficulties, then a quick refresh is normally your best option, or you can use the chat box to communicate any issues and our back-end team will get you back up and running as quickly as possible. We, of course, want to make the event as useful to you as possible today, so please participate in the polls, ask any questions that you have using the Q&A tab, and you can chat live with the back-end team, like I just mentioned, using the chat box function at any time during the event. And please do use that to say hi and let us know where you are tuning in from today. Whilst you are doing that, let me introduce our two speakers for today. So firstly, to kick things off with a presentation on SEO, we have Adam King. Adam is our in-house Google Ads and SEO specialist, and will be presenting you with some tips on best practices for building an organic audience. Then Seb, our CRO wizard, will take over and present the latest tips for converting more of that audience through conversion rate optimization tests. We will then move into an audience Q&A. We've got plenty of time for questions today, so please do write any questions that you have in the Q&A tab. Like I just mentioned, whenever they come to mind, we will try to get to as many as possible. Any we don't answer today, we will follow up with over the next day or two. Before getting things started, though, we have got a quick poll for you today. We're interested to understand a little bit more about you. So how much of a priority is SEO for you at the moment? Please do share your thoughts by answering that poll. And whilst you're doing that, I'll get things started and hand over to Adam to get things underway.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about search engine optimization, or otherwise known as SEO. So the obvious question to ask first is, what is SEO? So SEO, or again, search engine optimization, is a collection of techniques and methods used to improve your position in Google. And by improve your position in Google, what I mean is, should a user type in a particular keyword or key phrase, you will appear higher in Google's search engine. This is important because the vast majority of traffic is only ever achieved if you appear on the first page of Google. So imagine your own internet use. When you type in, I don't know, perhaps you're looking to buy some new clothing. You'll type in that particular type of clothing into Google, and I presume very rarely you then go, okay, let's go and check page 7 before you click through to a particular website. More often than not, you'll click through on the first position, then the second position, then the third position, and you'll generally not want to stray past page 1. So SEO, or again, search engine optimization, is a method to ensure that your web pages, your website feature as high as possible in Google, to ensure that you are found by individuals looking for the products or the services that you're offering. So the backbone of any SEO campaign is the keyword research. This is one of the most important aspects of the campaign. The other being the end result, the reporting, which I'll come to later. So keyword research, a lot of clients that I work with, they tend to intuit the keywords that they are targeting. And by that, I mean, let's say they're in the spectrometry industry, they'll often use terms and phrases that, whilst they use them frequently in the office, they're not necessarily being used or searched for by members of the industry, by the target audience. And so to conduct keyword research as a best practice, it's good to go through your own website, pick out the terms that you're already using. So, for example, perhaps on one of your pages, you're using spectrometry in the titles and in the text. You're using mass spectrometry. You're using UV vis spectroscopy. And then once you've got a full list, here at what we tend to do at Azole Network is select around 50 keywords. It's a good starting point, and then search for determine the search volume. Now I use Google Ads to determine a search volume. I go in, type all the keywords in that we're looking to target, and then find out how many times those terms or phrases have been searched for on average over the last 12 months. So say spectrometry in this example on the screen, on average, it is searched for between 1,000 and 10,000 times every month. That is a good keyword to search for. If on average your keyword is not being searched for at all, then it's not worth your time to try and target that keyword, because even though you use that term, your company uses that term, none of your end users are using the term. And so if nobody's going to search for the term, there's really no point in trying to optimize a particular page or section of your website for that term. Now, what we tend to do is target keywords with a large average monthly search volume, but with low competition. So there's not so many people targeting the keyword that we're looking at, but a lot of end users are searching for it. And this means that we're going to increase our traffic relatively quickly, because we're going to achieve higher positions in Google or other search engines. We predominantly focus on Google. And once we've done that, like I say, more traffic is going to come to your site as a result. So once we've determined a list of keywords, often around 50, we then go into a phase called keyword mapping. And what this means is we associate one of the keywords that has a search volume and is relatively easy to acquire at a high position for low competition, and we attach it to a particular page. Now, this isn't a physical attachment. We do it in Excel, for example, but it guides our actions going forward. So let's say spectrometry is the keyword. We find one page and we think, okay, this page is the page that we're going to optimize for that one keyword. Now, an error that I often see is that people try to use one page to target a number of keywords. Now, whilst this is possible, it's not best practice. It's better to have one keyword per page. Okay, and the quickest way, a rule of thumb to determine, okay, what terms am I already using on this page, is to look at what terms are you using in your H1s, what terms are you using in your H2s. Those are your titles and your subtitles. How often is this word being appearing in the text that I'm writing or I have written? And best practice is it should feature about 4%. So if your article is 100 words, then the keyword, in this case spectrometry, should feature 4 times and be in your H1 and H2. Okay, so once we've got the keyword list, we associate certain URLs of the website one to one keyword, one-to-one relationship. Now, after we've done both these things, we've done the keyword research, mapped a keyword to a particular URL, we start writing metadata. Now, first of all, you may be asking, what really is metadata? Where does it appear? Well, metadata is the meta title, meta description, and the keywords and of a particular page. And the title and the description, when you say you type in something into Google, a title will appear and a description will appear in Google. These are the meta titles and descriptions. So it's best to write your meta title and meta description in a way that entices clicks from the end user, but also satisfies Google's algorithmic requirements. Okay, so when doing SEO, outlining your SEO strategy, you always have to imagine, what does Google want? How do I satisfy what Google wants? Because Google is the proverbial middleman in this situation. Okay, so the meta title should be equal to or lower than roughly 60 characters. The description, 158 characters, equal to or less than. Now, the best practice is for, let's say you've got this one page, and again, spectrometry is the keyword. Yes, we've got search volume for it. Yes, we've mapped it to this particular page. It's best that you put spectrometry as the first term in your title, and you put it as early as possible in your description. Google reads like the West, from left to right, top to bottom. And so the earlier you put your key term, the sooner Google picks it up, the more SEO points you're going to get. Now, as you can see in the description here, we put spectrometry NMR supplier. Now, NMR is a secondary keyword. Like I mentioned before, we can use a page to target a couple of keywords, but NMR, say, may not feature in the H1 and H2, but does feature in the text. It is relevant to the article. And so if the title is spectrometry as the first keyword, NMR as the second keyword, it's best practice that in the description, spectrometry comes before NMR. Okay, supplier we put on as a sort of an indicator to the end user that yes, we are selling these products. And in the description, I often use a sentence that includes the first, second, perhaps even tertiary keyword, and describing what the page is about, and then a second sentence with a quick call to action like learn more here, or click here to learn more, something along those lines. But the biggest takeaway I can give you for metadata tips is to ensure that the title description have synergy, both in the terms that you use and the order in which you use those terms. Okay, so once you've done the keyword research, keyword mapping, and you've written and implemented the metadata, you should start to see you will start to see SEO benefits for your website. You'll start to see increased traffic, ideally increased number of goal completions. But there are other things that you can do now that the metadata is done to improve your SEO score. And the first one of these is link building. Now, link building is essentially giving your website credibility. And it is, let's say, Wikipedia, for example. If Wikipedia has an article and links to your website, that will give you credibility because Wikipedia in itself is a credible website. Now, this can be a really time-consuming process because oftentimes you have to find another website with a level of credibility. You have to get in contact with the owner of that website and say to them, please may you link to my website. And if the person that you're emailing is busy or just isn't interested, it can be a really sort of laborious project. Now, the benefit with working with Azole Network is that we have 10 sites, all really credible, and we can link to you instantly, essentially within minutes. You don't need to do anything for us to link from our pages to your pages. So that's a real good benefit with working with us to improve your SEO score. Okay, after link building, there's disavowing links. Now, my biggest bugbear with disavowing links is the nomenclature that Google uses. Okay, and it's specifically the term toxic. So what disavowing links is when poor websites, or what's classed as toxic websites, are linking to your site, you're getting negative SEO score points and a negative SEO score. Okay, and what Google determines as a poor site or a toxic site is if the site that is linking to your site has a low domain trust score, it's a mirrored page, there's not much text to HTML. All of these things Google looks at and goes, oh, I don't like this website. Now, when you disavow a link, you are not damaging either your physical relationship with the domain in question, and you're not damaging your digital relationship. All you're doing is putting a hand up to Google and saying, hi, Google, I understand that these websites are of a low quality, they are toxic. I'm not using them to improve my score. The owners of the website they won't get an email telling them that you've disavowed links with them. And equally, the links that, if the links are providing traffic to your site, you won't lose any of that traffic. It won't cancel the link. It's just you putting your hand up saying, I understand that these links are toxic. And this is a really quick way to, again, just improve your SEO score. Once your SEO score improves, your position in search improves. The next item is technical audits, auditing your website. So as Google reads your website, it realizes that there may be a number of errors of your website, and as a way of enforcing particular standards, Google will reduce your SEO score. It'll push you down the rankings if your site is full of errors, essentially. Now, here at Azole Network, we use SEMrush, of which there are 41 areas classified as errors. And what we do is we identify them. If they are small errors, perhaps you've got 4 internal broken links across your site, we'll go in and fix them. If they're larger, much more systemic errors, we can notify you, and you could pass that information on to the dev team, reduce your dev team, reducing a lot of work on your side, or we can fix the issues for you at an additional cost, of course. So this is, not only does this improve your SEO score, but it also just improves your website. So if there's any algorithmic changes coming up, your website is in the best place, because you can just tackle the algorithm change rather than having to tackle a systemic problem and then build on that to change your website to counteract an algorithmic change. So technical audits are really important, but are oftentimes just left alone. Okay, so once we've identified the keywords that we're targeting, we put in our metadata, we've done technical audits, disavowing links, we've built links. It's time to report on how well our work is performing. Okay, and the beauty of a sort of SEO work, rather than perhaps more traditional marketing methods, is that essentially, if the arrow is green and points up, we've done well. If it's red and points down, there's room for improvement. Now, the easiest way to measure your performance is via goals. Okay, and I'll explain goals a little bit more, but essentially these are a measure of actions that you have predetermined as important actions that you want the user of your website to conduct. A measure of particular behavior. So if you want a user of your website to click on a particular calls to action, you can measure that call to action. And that's a really good way to say, okay, so the SEO campaign has brought a number of increased number of individuals to our site, and those individuals have behaved in the way that we wish them to behave. After goals, users, new users, sessions, and page views, these metrics all work together and to demonstrate higher traffic. So users, the number of individual users coming to the site over a period of time. New users, the number of new individuals that haven't come to the site before are now coming to the site. Sessions, how many times individuals have come to the site. So one user may come back to your website 3 or 4 times. and page views, which is once they're on your site, how many different pages have they looked at. So these 4 metrics all work together to demonstrate traffic numbers, essentially, how has the SEO strategy increased traffic on our site and increased where they're looking at what they're looking at on the site. Now, after users and goals, page views per session, average session duration, and bounce rate. These all indicate the engagement levels of the users coming to your site, and also the quality of traffic coming to your site. So when I say quality, what I mean is we're not necessarily bringing a number of students to your site. We work in scientific instrumentation and products, and students aren't necessarily purchasing those products. So although it's good to have them come to the site, they are the scientists of the future who are going to ideally go into the industry and purchase your products in the future. They're not purchasing the products right now, and so they are of a lower quality traffic right now today. And so page views per sessions, average session durations, bounce rate are a really good measure of the quality of your traffic. Okay, so I said before that I'd come back to goals. So goals are as important as the keyword research. Keyword research is the foundation of your SEO campaign. The goals are the fruits of your labor of an SEO campaign. Now, there are a number of goals that you can implement via Google Analytics. However, the most solid goal, the goal that I personally promote first to anyone, is a goal to trigger when a thank you page has been served. So if somebody comes to your website, fills in a form, and they press submit, best practice would be to then serve the user a thank you page. Thank you for submitting this form. And then we measure every time that page, the thank you page URL, is served up to the user. And this is a really good measure to say, okay, now we've started the SEO campaign, we've done all this work, and the number of people filling in forms, requesting products, requesting quotes, requesting further information, these have increased month on month or year on year. So if you could take anything away, goals and the keyword research are the most important things to any SEO campaign. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Seb, who's going to talk to you about CRO. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Adam. I'll just take you through conversion rate optimization. So conversion rate optimization is the removal of barriers that stand between your sales team and your audience. It's where you streamline a customer's journey through the site so they can get what they want out of it. A fully optimized site using CRO can increase your inbound leads in a huge way. Conversion rates are the number of goal completions against the amount of website traffic. So a goal is whatever you want it to be. It's usually contact form fills or e-commerce transactions, but this could be something more specific. So you could be attempting to lower the bounce rate on a particular web page. It's whatever you need it to be. It's important to look at your site as if you're one of your audience. Some of the issues that they might have might be long unnoticed by you and your team. One of the more common examples is with request to quotes contact buttons. So sometimes they're placed on pages where the audience needs to learn a little bit more about the product before they can convert. So placing an informational request call to action alongside the transactional request to quote is something that can be worth testing. Before you start thinking about A/B testing and looking at platforms for it, you need to look at your analytics. Firstly, do you have the right goals set up? You can't really know where the website is underperforming if you haven't got the metrics set up for what good performance is. Just having lots of traffic to certain pages isn't necessarily the best benchmark of what good performance is. Really, what you should be looking at is, are those people converting? Are they becoming inbound leads? And you need goals set up to do that. Once you've got those goals set up, you need to be able to identify where the pain points are. So what pages are people converting on? Where are the majority of your leads coming from? This will allow you some insight into what's working and what's not. Some areas of the site will naturally do better than others, so it may also give you an idea of where you should be creating internal links to those high converting pages. An example here is where you could be pushing people from news and blog pages to product pages, and you could be testing different ideas on how best to push people to products and what products to push. You need to know what your goals are. What do you want to achieve from your website? So most websites that I work with are focused on inbound lead generation, but I've worked on various different goals. The primary CRO strategy that I would recommend is A/B testing. This is where you present more than one different option to your audience. We call these variants. So it's the same page, but with a very slight difference. We run this as an experiment and gather data on the audience's behaviors when they're on the page. We see which variant allows for more inbound leads and then make recommendations based on actual data. So it's not opinion, it's actual data based on experimentation. The optimization platform that we use doesn't actually change your website, not in the back end at least. What it does is it puts a mask over the front of the website so that the audience see different versions of web pages. So it's much easier to implement this than to actually change the pages in the back end, for example, on WordPress. This is a tried and tested method of improving conversions. Azole is all about marketing science. We come at this with the idea that these hypotheses that we've got need to be proven using experiments and data. And what I've done is I've created a repository of successful testing within various different scientific sectors. And we can generalize some of the results. Obviously, it depends on the website, but we can generalize some of the results. So say if you work within sensors, there's probably going to be some correlation on what successful tests will look like. You probably already know what on your website you'd want to change. By implementing an A/B test, you can know that that change will work, or if the original is a better option. Often, I'll get marketing managers who want to update their websites, but have to justify their changes through multiple parties. So usually product managers, etc. This allows for data to back up those changes that you might want to make so that they can't really argue with you. You've got the data to prove that the audience are the people who want that change. CRO and SEO work together in a really good way. SEO is a fantastic way of increasing the amount of traffic, the amount of quality traffic to a website. So making sure that the relevant audience finds your website organically. Now, this will normally increase the number of contact form fills and other goals just by increasing the amount of the right traffic to those pages, especially given the way that we focus on making sure that it's the right people coming to those pages. CRO is sort of the next step to this, or a different strategy. It's not a way of increasing traffic. Instead, it's a way to ensure that when your website traffic get to the site, there's no barriers in the way to them clicking on that submit form or completing a request to quote. If you've got a good amount of traffic or quality traffic, but you're struggling to get inbound leads from the website, or you just want to increase them, then CRO is probably what you should be looking at. So SEO and CRO can be run concurrently, sequentially, or CRO can just be a standalone campaign. The only thing to bear in mind is that in order to get statistically significant data on a page, you need to have enough website traffic to those pages. So somewhere around 20 sessions a day. Well, that's probably a good minimum. I mean, there's no maximum. I've done tests on pages that have had 10,000 hits a day. So there is no maximum, but there is a minimum. If you haven't got the traffic, but are still interested in looking at CRO, that's where you'd probably think about running both an SEO and CRO campaign at the same time. To summarize there, what you've got to think about is that SEO will increase the traffic, but what it won't do is deal with the barriers that are in place to those conversions. That's what CRO is about. So what you need to start here is, while you can make edits without any knowledge of coding, a basic knowledge of HTML and CSS will get you started in a good way. I mean, ideally, for more complex tests, you'd have a bit of knowledge of JavaScript, but that's definitely not a necessity. It's not just about adding random buttons either. It does require a bit of an eye for design, and some knowledge of graphic design would be helpful, but it's not necessary. You can just play around with it, but those things are definitely a helpful thing to have. To give you an example of what some of the results can look like, we had a standard navigation bar on our own website, but nothing really stood out. So the contact button just looked like every other button on the menu. And people in this part of the world read left to right, up to down. And unless you've got something that draws the eye in a navigation bar, they really won't look back up there unless they want to go somewhere else on the site. So to draw the eye, I put a red background around the contact button. This helped draw the eye to such an extent that over a short testing window on the homepage, we received 1 form fill on the original, but 9 on the variant with the red background. We implemented that change shortly after the testing, and it continued to show promise. So what we can see there is that it went from a 0.31% conversion rate to a 2.81% conversion rate, which is a huge margin. So, and that can represent a huge return on investment in a campaign like this. We've also run tests on email link clicks, form submissions, and complete page redesigns with the idea that bounce rates, etc., can be fixed. Another example that we can see on the screen there is that we changed some of the buttons on a page. So on the original, there was no additional CTA. We added a CTA, a call to action, and we had 8 clicks versus the 1, and 7 clicks against the 1. These changes can represent huge margins and huge return on investments. I am continuing to run tests on our website. So alongside the red background, we're testing the wording of the contact button. This ongoing test has already shown us that contact us, the current wording, may not actually be the best option for us. So as you can see there, what we've got is we've increased the conversion rate by nearly a full %. So speak to an expert is potentially the best option for us. What I would do is keep an eye out over the next few weeks, as with that contact button will probably change based on the results of this test. So bringing things back to you and your websites. If you want to increase leads from your website, it's definitely worth looking at considering starting A/B testing. CRO and user experience, UX, are hugely interlinked. So many of the barriers between you and your audience are a UX issue. Testing different options can give you the comfort of knowing that your audience have had a hand in the design of your web pages, and they know what they want. They know what makes things easier for them. Once you've got your inbound leads sorted from the website, this can allow you to focus on other areas of your marketing, so that it can give you some reassurance that when you direct potential leads to the website, they've got a higher chance of converting. CRO is all about maximizing inbound leads. It's ensuring that website traffic that are sniffing around the website actually bite. The more inbound leads, the more time your sales and marketing teams have got to work on other strategies. Not only this, but it allows sales and marketing teams from various different companies to direct traffic to the website and have more confidence that it will convert. Thanks very much for that, and I'll hand that back over to Danny. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you, Seb. Thank you, Adam, for a really interesting presentation there. We are going to take some questions in just a moment. I'm just going to bring Adam and Seb back on. Awesome. Thanks, guys. We've got lots of good questions coming from the audience. If you've got anything else you want answering, guys, please do use the Q&A tab. I know I was scribbling down lots of questions as you guys were talking, so I was learning a lot. So thank you for that. Seb, as you've just been speaking, can I come to you first? The question about the length of tests. How long should people be running tests, or does it depend purely on the amount of traffic you're getting?
It does, yeah. So it's very much a question of how long is a piece of string. So it does depend entirely on the traffic, the engagement with the testing. What I would suggest is that you run a test for maybe a minimum of 3 weeks. The reason I say that is that if you run a test for a week and you get tons of traffic, it might look like that's a good subsection of your audience, but there's probably going to be contextual factors to deal with within that week. So potentially, if you were running a social media LinkedIn campaign, driving people to the website, what you've got there is an overwhelming majority of social traffic, which might not represent a good cross-section of your audience. So running a test over about 3 weeks should give you a good amount of representative data, so a representative sample of your audience. So I'd say 3 weeks is a minimum. Maximum about 90 days is. I wouldn't ever suggest run a test for longer than that. It sort of makes no sense to. But yeah.
What about times of year? So if one particular client sees big increase in sales in the fall or the autumn time, should you be testing sort of seasonally as well, or am I thinking too much here?
No, it does make sense. So there are, again, it does all depend on the context. So if you think that seasonal traffic is really important, then I would suggest run similar tests at different times of the year to see if it makes a big difference. If you don't think it's going to be that important, then I would just consider running the test and implementing whichever you think is going to work. But yeah, it does depend entirely on the website at that point.
Sure. Adam, we'll bring you back in. You did cover it a little bit. I'm just trying to get a really clear answer for the audience, but what's a good keyword search volume?
Well, concentrating just on search volume isn't necessarily the way that I go about it. So a quick rule of thumb really would be a really big search volume probably has a low sort of conversion rate, so click-through rate. If you're going to use a really broad term, it's probably going to have a really high search volume, but the number of people that are going to fill in a form of them at the end of using that term is quite low. Again, equally, the lowest search volume being 10, you may have a higher, form fill rate, let's say, with such a niche audience. If you're selling something super niche and people are searching for it, percentage-wise, it's more likely that they're looking to sort of purchase that item. So I would, going into it, I would have a spread of keyword of volumes, but also look more at competition. Is there lower competition to acquire those keywords? Again, the higher the keyword, the lower the competition, arguably better. But if you go too high, like into, imagine 2 or 3 years ago, coronavirus had a pretty good search volume, but not many people were going to buy something at the end of it. They're just searching for information, not necessarily with a transactional intent.
Sure. So just on the high competition, is it just not worth going for the keywords that are highly competitive, or are you saying split your budgets a bit on the competitive ones and then focus more on the less competitive ones?
No, I'd still, if you want to win the game, you've got to step onto the pitch, right? Like you're going to, even if it's a high competition, if that's your market, you're going to have to go for it, right? But at the same time, focusing all of your efforts in a really difficult market may not be the best use of your time. If you go for sort of low-hanging fruit, which is easy, low competition, higher search volumes, sometimes lower search volumes if it's really specific. Having a range is the best thing to do.
And is there any limits with the amount you can? So, can you go for hundreds of keywords, or would you recommend focusing on a sort of a select number?
Well, yeah, for sure, you can go for hundreds of keywords if your website has got hundreds of pages. If your website's got thousands of pages, you can go for thousands of keywords. That's a lot of work, though. That's why we generally suggest starting with 50 and building the campaign from there. It's because 50 are going to be what are my core values? What is it that we sell? If mass spectrometry is what your company sells and it's high competition, you're going to have to go after that keyword. There's no way around it. But there could be some low-hanging fruit that will benefit your website and ultimately, your KPIs, the number of leads that you're going to get through immediately, or at least improve your probability of getting those leads through immediately by targeting some low competition keywords and some low volume keywords that are really specific.
Yeah. So we'll come back to yourself. The example you showed that you're doing at the moment with Azole Network and the call to action, we've got 4 variables. They were all showing fairly similar results. Say we get to 3 months of testing and they're all saying, basically they're all getting the same amount of conversions. Would you stick with the status quo, or would you recommend that we do 2 weeks with one, 2 weeks with another, 2 weeks with another, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so if you've gotten to the end of a period of testing and the results are that there's no standout winner, there's 2 main sort of thought processes on that. One is that if you've got an aesthetic choice, you just think, I prefer this particular option, then there's no harm in either changing it or keeping the original. There's because at that point it's not going to harm anything to go either way. So there are genuine benefits to that. If you do just stick with the status quo, nothing's going to change though. So what I would recommend is implement the variant and then run additional tests on that variant. So, for example, in the test that we ran, I added a background, and then I started changing that. I'm running additional tests on that particular test. So an example would be if you've added a transactional call to action, a request a quote on a particular page, and you're not seeing huge amounts of wins on that, maybe it's worth implementing that and then changing the wording of that button to see if that'll get you more results. But that if you just leave things as they are, things are going to stay the same.
Just thinking if there are any skeptics in the audience, or perhaps they work with people in charge of budgets who might be a bit more skeptical about some of the testing, can things like the color, the wording really make such a big difference?
Yeah, they can make a massive difference. Sometimes it's the smallest of things that can make a huge change. And for example, just having a red background didn't usually help. I've run tests where I put a border around a button, just a small little thing, that little design choice that just made it stand out that little bit further. Equally, I've redesigned a full page, and that makes huge differences as well. But yeah, sometimes it's marginal gains. So one extra conversion can reap dividends. Sometimes if you make a tiny change, it just draws the eye. One thing that I have been looking at is the effect of A/B testing on returning website traffic. And what I'm researching at the moment is does it make returning website traffic notice the change? So if you go to a website that you go to all the time or that you've been to, would noticing something different make a big difference? And as far as I'm seeing, it does make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I guess once you give people the data, then you can't really argue with the results, then, can you?
Exactly.
Adam, we'll take a couple of these audience questions. I know you've started writing some answers, but just for the benefit of everyone else, if they haven't seen that, Jessica's asking, how can you see what your domain trust score is and what other sites backlink to us? I think is what we're asking there.
Yeah, so here it is, a network. We use SEMrush, and it's generally just a functionality of supporting software like SEMrush. Within SEMrush, within there's like a Backlink Audit section. You go into there, Backlink Audit, as long as you've set it up. That's a really easy, really simple process to do. You put your website in, and it checks your backlinks, and then you just rerun, put in the number of pages that you've got. So let's say your standard, you just put in 200 pages, because your website is 200 pages. You just run the test, and then it will produce a list of the links that are toxic. And then you have to do some reformatting. The way to disavow them is through Google Search Console. If you want to speak about how to do that, it's probably best after the actual formatting of the TXT document that you have to put in Google Search Console. it's fiddly, but once you get it, it is a really, really easy way to improve your SEO score. It's not like a labor-intensive effort job.
Yeah, I think this would be a good time just to touch on the SEO report health checks that we do. So if anyone is interested in getting a free SEO health check, all you have to do is click on that link that's appearing on the top, or the bottom left corner of your screen. That will take you to a page where you just have to fill in your website details, and then one of our team can follow up with you and with a full report, take you through what's going on your website, and if there's anything that we can help to improve. Adam, have I missed anything there? Is there anything else in that report that I should have mentioned?
Sorry, say that again.
Was there anything else in the report that is worth mentioning to the audience? Or
the toxic link report?
No, sorry, the free SEO health check that we do for clients.
No, please get in touch. We'll get the team will fill it in, get it back to you really quickly, and we can let you know how the website's performing, or your website is performing.
Awesome. Yeah, so do click on that link if you are interested, and we'll get that. We'll get back to you on that. There's a question here about quick wins, and I was also going to ask a question about Google Ads, and if it's worth, if you had the choice between investing in Google Ads or SEO, which is better. And then this question is about if there are any quick wins to increase organic traffic.
So I'll tackle the Google Ads versus SEO campaign first. Of course, if you can fight on two fronts, then it's definitely worth fighting on two fronts. The wider your net, the more fish you'll catch. However, if perhaps you have budget restraints, budget restraints really is the decider between Google Ads, whether you're going to do Google Ads or not. Or any other factors, I would go for SEO rather than Google Ads. Principally because you're looking at around 1% of all searches are going to click through onto a Google ad, whereas if you are position 1, you look at around 40% of all traffic clicking on the top position. So again, if your search volume is, let's say, 100, one person is going to click on your Google ad, whereas 40 people are going to click if you are position 1, with diminishing returns down the first page. So I would plump for a SEO campaign. Additional benefits of the SEO campaign, it's it's a constant payment with Google Ads. You've got to constantly pay X amount per month. If you set up the ads wrong, or you're not that, you don't really know how to do Google Ads, it's going to be an expensive endeavor. Or it could be, but most likely will be an expensive endeavor. Whereas with SEO, you don't have that additional cost. So you can, if you're doing it in-house, you can make mistakes. And it won't cost the earth, essentially. Yeah.
And then just on the question about the quick wins, I guess if you've not been paying much attention to SEO, there usually will be some quick wins that we can implement, which is why the report that we're offering is so great, because that will showcase some of those quick wins that can be done straight away. And it's a no obligations report as well, so by all means do take advantage of that if you are interested in enhancing your rankings in search engines. Good question here. How long does it take for SEO to work for a website with fewer than 200 or 300 visitors? Or does the amount of visitors have any impact on how your SEO is working?
The amount of visitors you're getting right now doesn't really have that much of an effect. One of the core goals, objectives, is to increase traffic. Shouldn't traffic need to be increased? I'll come back to why I say that in a second. So yeah, it will. Of course, it'll work on any website. It just doesn't matter how many pages you have. Of course, as part of an SEO campaign here with us at Azole Network, we also generate content for you, which is an SEO benefit that I don't personally do. I'm not a content writer. My esteemed colleague and friend Ben Stibbs-Eaton is our chief content writer. He would run through run through that with you, and there's definite benefits to increasing the size of your website in a strategic fashion. So it doesn't matter if your website is small now, working with us, it will be made bigger in a strategic way. But yeah, an SEO campaign will work with a website of any size. And just to come back to why I said sometimes our aim is to increase traffic. It may happen that an SEO campaign is there to decrease your audience. And that's because right now you're getting sort of, let's say, a lot of students, essentially, like people looking for educational pieces rather than for transactional pieces. And by coming and implementing SEO onto an SEO strategy onto your product pages, for example, we will be getting rid of superfluous traffic, but attracting people a lot lower down that sales funnel. So you could reduce your traffic, and that's a good thing. That's why goals, like I said in my presentation, that's why goals are important, because if your traffic is reduced by 20%, but your goals, people filling in forms saying, "Give me, here's all my money, I want your product," increases by 200%, that's a good thing. To me, anyway.
Yeah. And then, so I'm going to bring you back in. Just a bit of clarification about the A/B testing. Should people be running them at the same time, essentially?
So that's both variants. What you really want to do, as you would in any experiment, is have an experimental hypothesis being tested against a control group, and your control group is your website as it is now. You would using an A/B testing platform similar to like Google Optimize is a good example of that. What you would do is you would create a variant and then run that against the original. And you could create multiple variants, but they'll all be tested against the original. You're running them against that control.
And in terms of how long it should run for, like you said previously, depends on the amount of traffic you're getting, but a minimum of 30 days.
Yeah, roughly that. Yeah. And again, it's worth monitoring that. So if you're not getting anything, if you're not getting any traffic or any engagement with the tests after 30 days, it may be worth implementing, or maybe worth adjusting whereabouts on the website you're putting the test, because it may be that you're getting no engagement on one particular product page, but if you just adjusted the page that you've got the test running on, it might make a big difference.
Perfect. I'm just going to intersect here and to draw people's attention to a couple of things. So in the handouts on the right-hand side, you can find further resources that can help you learn a bit more about SEO. You can read some of the testimonials from the clients that Adam said and the team of we've been working with. They really are a great team. They get fantastic results for their clients. If it's something that you're interested in, they definitely do get in touch. We also have a couple of other webinars coming up in May, one on nanotechnology marketing and one that's focusing on brand and culture. So both links to both of those can be found in the handouts as well. And before we finish up on a couple of other questions, we're just going to run another poll. If you are interested in having a call with our team, a discovery call about SEO or CRO, please vote in that poll and we will follow up with you. Guys, a couple more questions. Adam, really good one here. Is it important to target a variety of intents within your keyword selection, match to product pages, blog posts, etc., or does it entirely depend on the goal?
No, it's very important to match the intent. So a real easy way to decide which intent, there's a lot of intents, but the ones we generally focus on are educational, transactional, or split. Okay, so a really easy way is to type in the keyword that you're going to target, and you'll see a list of, anytime you type anything in Google, you'll see a list of websites that are pages that are being served, and you'll more than likely be able to work out what the intent is for that keyword. So let's say again, mass spectrometer. The intent may, if you see a lot of pages coming up that what is a mass spectrometer? How does a mass spectrometer work? There's an educational intent there. It's better to implement metadata that is suggestive of an educational intent. Equally, if the search results are mass spectrometer, cost, price of, much more transactional. You want to focus on the transactional metadata. However, this is, like I mentioned before about my colleague Ben and his role in an SEO strategy, or his role. This is much more in the creation of content. You're creating content to match the intent that the user is using. Perhaps I didn't mention before, but I'll elaborate now. A quick win would be the best quick win would be to ensure metadata is on all your product pages, and product pages will have transactional intent. So start there.
Perfect. And then there's a good question here about setting up goals on a B2B website. Should they only be focused on completion goals, or is awareness goals still important?
I mean, I'm all about sort of form fill. Do you have people filled in forms? Okay, if I could be perfectly candid, that is what puts food on everyone's table, right? That's what's making the world go round. People filling in forms and purchasing products. So that is front and center where I would start. If you've got a much bigger sort of, if you're way down the line of your SEO campaign, for sure, these things are useful to an extent, but at the end of the day, our role is to generate leads. Yeah, and that is the filling in of forms.
Yeah. If I can add something there, what you can do on Google Analytics is, if you want to look at awareness and engagement, you can set up event tracking as opposed to goal tracking. And what that allows you to do is to be able to keep your goals for your conversions, so that you know what your conversion rate overall is actually about. It's those end conversions. But on the event tracking, you can monitor scroll depth on a web page. You can monitor the engagement on any page, and those behavioral aspects to any web page. You can monitor them on that, and that's really easily set up through something like Google Tag Manager. And there's loads of guides online on how to implement those. But I would recommend you keep them separate for the same reason that Adam was saying. It's you want to try and keep goals as end completions.
Perfect. And then we'll just do a couple more questions before we wrap things up. There's a question asking about, is there another analytics software that we would recommend that integrates similar to Google Analytics? One of the beauties of working with Azole Network is that you get access to Azole Intel, which is our in-house analytics platform, which basically simplifies everything that Google Analytics is in an easy to understand, easy to report dashboard that you can quickly showcase to other people in your organization, key stakeholders, other departments. It's a really, really good product. So that is all that's part of our SEO service. And of course, we recommend that highly. Seb, final question for you, and then we'll wrap things up. Is there anything people can't test? So you mentioned copy, color. What about things like videos?
Yeah, you can. This essentially the limit of what you can test is your ability. So your knowledge of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that all would be massively helpful to put together really complicated testing. But you don't need any of it to get started. You can. So for a start, you can use the built-in editors on A/B testing platforms, and that is just drag and drop, make things bigger, make things smaller, change the text. Those simple tests that can all be done using the built-in editor, so you don't actually need to edit the HTML by typing it in manually. If you want to get into really, really complicated stuff, then yeah, you do need to be able to do that. But then there's also a different type of A/B test called a redirect test that you might be interested in. What that does is you build two versions of a page, say within WordPress. You duplicate a page and make the changes there. And then you can, because if you feel more comfortable doing it that way, you can generate a new page with your variant, and then half of the people will go to the original, half of the people will go to the new page. So it's using a redirect rather than using that mask, as I mentioned in the presentation. And that's really useful. There are a few downsides to duplicating a page. From an SEO perspective, you really don't want to be duplicating pages. So what you would then need to do is disallow that page using a robots.txt thing. Getting way too into it, I know, but I'm excited. Yeah, that's all sort of stuff that we would do.
Perfect. As you can see, Seb is very enthusiastic about Seo. Adam too. So the team here are fantastic. They've been doing a lot of work internally on our website. We've seen some great results. So if anyone's in the audience and they're interested in learning more or need help to increase their search ranking, or they want to run some CRO tests that I couldn't recommend these guys enough. So please do get in touch and we'll get something in the diaries. Thank you, Seb. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. When you leave the webinar room, say a short survey will appear. Please do take 20 seconds of your time just to fill that in and give us some feedback. We read everything and we will reuse it to make our events better. So thank you very much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your afternoons.
Bye.
Thanks very much.